We just heard the Beach Boys, of course, with Little Deuce Coupe and playing rhythm guitar. On that track and so many other hits, David Marks, who joins us today. A founding member of the Beach Boys, David played on such massive hits for the band as Surfin Safari, Surfin' USA, Shut Down, Surfer Girl, Catch a Wave, Little Deuce Coupe, and In My Room, making his distinctive surf guitar style an important part of the group's early success. David left the Beach Boys in late 1963 and went on to play in other bands, like his legendary garage rock combo Dave and the Marksmen, and later the psychedelic cult act The Moon. Session work with the likes of Delaney and Bonnie and Warren Zevon followed, but David has never really left the Beach Boys' orbit, performing on and off with the group for the past 20 years, and most notably contributing his guitar sound to the group's 2012 reunion album, That's Why God Made the Radio, and the new Brian Wilson solo album, No Peer Pressure. It's a tremendous honor to have David Marks join us on our Beach Boys Bash. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
You know,
Pleasure.
The first proper Beach Boys album I ever got, aside from greatest hits compilations, was the Little Deuce Coupe album.
Oh, yeah, that was our fourth one.
Yeah, and I remember turning the back of the album over and trying to put faces to the music I was listening to.
Right.
And the first thing I thought was, these guys are not working on the cars, not in those suits and ties. That's
Dennis actually was, though. He was under the hood, and he was also out at the beach surfing. But, yeah, that would apply to the rest of us. Except my father was a master mechanic, and he tried to get me to work on cars, but I kept burning my knuckles and breaking my fingers, and so I had enough of that. But, yeah, those suits and ties and working on cars doesn't go together.
Yeah. But, you know, you guys were looking sharp. Then I would get other albums. I wouldn't buy the Beach Boys albums in sequence. You know, I was just picking up what I saw. Right. And it was a little confusing for me because sometimes you were there and sometimes you were not there.
And plus, that was a little before your time, wasn't it?
Yeah. The first Beach Boys record I ever got was the Endless Summer compilation.
Yeah, it's always confusing when an original member disappears after the first two albums, you know, like yeah. Brian Jones and a couple people like that. Of course, his circumstances were extenuating.
Right.
But, yeah, Brian decided to stay home and produce records and write songs, and the touring was actually taking away from him doing that. So we thought we were finished. Of course, Al Jardine was in on the very first recording, Surfin', which was a local L.A. hit. But then he quit, and we went on to do some electric guitar stuff, which was successful, Surfin' Safari, Surfin' USA, and the car songs and all that. But when Brian decided to stay home, Al came back and played the bass and sang Brian's high falsetto parts on the road and saved the day. And so we were able to continue touring and promoting our albums. And then Brian would come out on special high-profile gigs and things like that.
Right.
So as far as the albums, Al actually came back on our third album, Surfer Girl, to record some bass and sing a little bit. But when I left permanently, he came back permanently to do the recordings and the road gigs.
But some of the cuts that you recorded while you were still a member did wind up on, like, the next album.
Yeah, so we did a whole lot of volume. We did a tremendous amount of recording in a short period of time because Capitol Records wanted us to produce 2 albums a year. So the 2.5 years that I was there in the beginning, we did 5 albums. And some of the stuff that I recorded sort of leaked over on future albums. Plus, after I quit touring with the boys on the road, I would hang out with Brian while they were on the road, and Brian would use me on occasion to do some overdubs, like the guitar part on Don't Worry Baby and that kind of stuff. So, I leaked over. I was never very far either. You know, I sat in with them quite a bit through the years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess the Beach Boys is sort of like the Mafia. Once you're in...
You know, that's funny you said that. I had that same exact analogy yesterday. I was talking to someone. Yeah, it's part of your being. You just can't get away from it. So nowadays, I enjoy going out on the road with the Beach Boys for selected dates.
Sure. It's funny, you know, we were talking about Al Jardine. When I told some people that I was going to be speaking to you, they wanted me to ask you a question, and it was something that I had never even considered. but they were wondering if there was, at that time, bad blood between you and Al.
You know, that's something that naturally people might assume. And through some of the years, we thought we were adversaries, but we couldn't figure out why. And say, wait a minute, we're both Beach Boys, and, you know, we were both there on the ground floor at the beginning. And so nowadays we're best of friends. We bonded quite a bit on the 50th anniversary tour. Because, you know, when the Beach Boys started, I was a child practically.
Yeah.
And Carl was only 2 years ahead of me, and Dennis 2 ahead of him. Brian and Mike were pretty much, you know, approaching adulthood there. And Al Jardine was, you know, Brian and Mike's age. So we didn't have much bonding time. I was a pain in the butt because I was a kid. You know? But when I became an adult, we bonded as adults, and it's all good.
It's all good. You know, you grew up across the street from the Wilson family, and they were known to be a very musical bunch. Was that the case with your family, too, or did the music from the Wilson household draw you over there?
Yeah, well, when I was 4, I remember picking out little melodies on my aunt's piano, and then my grandpa had a mandolin, and his cousins came over from Italy and had guitars, and they were on Ted Mack amateur hour.
Huh.
So, and my mother, she could go around the kitchen singing like a big band singer, and my father could sing like Nat King Cole when he was just fooling around, but he was imitating Nat King Cole, and it wasn't bad. So I suppose I do have some genes, musical genes, but when I moved next to the Wilsons when I was 7, I was an only child, so I bonded with the 3 brothers immediately, and was over there constantly. And their parents, the Wilsons' parents, Murray played the organ and wrote songs, and their mother Audrey played the piano. So every Sunday they had music, and of course during the week. But on Sunday it was a special family music thing, and I remember being over there and just soaking it all in. There was an education in itself, I would say.
Can you remember the first time you heard a song that you played guitar on getting airplay on a radio station?
Yeah, you know, when Surfin Safari came on for the first time, we were told when they were going to play it for the first time, I think it was KFWB or KRLA, one of those local LA stations, and yeah, it was really exciting. But, you know, when Surfin record by the Beach Boys, I rehearsed it with them. That I was in school, and they ran off and recorded it without me. But I was in the car with Brian and Dennis and Carl when they played that one for the first time on the radio, and that was exciting also. But when I heard my own guitar coming through on Surfin Safari, we were at dinner, and I kind of stuck my head in the towel and screamed like a little girl for excitement.
Let's go surfing.
You know, if I have the timeline correct, you mentioned you were a kid. When the Beach Boys were the biggest music act in the country, you were what, 14?
I was 14.
Yeah, I would imagine that it was suddenly easier for you to meet girls.
Suddenly, yeah. You know, in junior high school, in the 7th, 8th grade, I tried to keep a lid on it, but, you know, of course, the word got around. They saw me on albums and things like that. I really went through some hell with the athletes stealing the attention away from the little girls, you know. So Carl and I had to quit public school and go to private school after that. You
mentioned playing, and I mentioned it too, playing on the records. There is this myth that's grown up over the years that Brian used studio musicians like exclusively. But when you were in the group, I mean, you guys were a legit recording act.
Well, when Brian started working on things like Smile and Pet Sounds, he did use the Wrecking Crew exclusively, pretty much. Of course, he had his brothers and Mike singing, and Al, of course, singing on the stuff. But when we first started out, we were self-contained musically. We played our own instruments. We laid down the music tracks with our guitars and drums, and then went back and overdubbed our vocals. And that's the way it was done back then. We were actually hired for gigs because of our self-containment to back up singers who didn't have instrumentation. So they would hire the Beach Boys, and we backed up unbelievably people like Sam Cooke and Lou Rawls and Little Richard and Dee Dee Sharp. Well, we backed up all of the acts of the day because we played our own instruments.
Let me hear you.
The Beach Boys with Surfer's Rule from 1963's Surfer Girl album. Our guest today is founding member of the Beach Boys, David Marks. And we were talking about the Beach Boys being at the pinnacle of success, and you were only 14 years old. Had that been me, I would have been impossible to deal with.
Oh, I was. Believe me. I was.
Well, I've read the book, The Lost Beach Boy, the one you worked on with John Stebbins.
Yes, he's a great writer.
Yeah, and the circumstances of your departure from the Beach Boys are explained there. But for the benefit of our listeners, I guess the short version would be it was down to personality clashes with yourself and the Wilsons' father, Murray.
Well, nothing like that happens overnight, or, well, I guess maybe it has, but for me, it was just a matter of time, chain of events. But if you want to pin it on one thing, I would say that the adults were starting to quibble over business and money and things of that nature. And, for example, my mom and Murray would clash on certain business things. And so basically that's why I eventually left the group. It was business, basically, and I was a child, so I didn't really understand. Of course, I was all gung-ho on my own band, too, so we were the first ones on A&M Records, Dave and the Marksmen. We had a little hit for a minute. But, it was basically just the business end of it was clashing with us having fun.
I want to talk a little bit about David Marks and the Marksmen because those records you made are considered garage rock classics now. And bizarrely, for a time, Murray Wilson wanted to manage your group.
Yeah, after I had left the band on a pretty permanent basis, I started my own little band, and we rehearsed across the street in my house from the Wilsons, and Murray heard it, and he was trying to go into competition with his son Brian for producing records. But being that he was the reason that I left the Beach Boys, basically, I told him no, and as a result, I think he kind of hindered my airplay a little bit. I don't have any proof of that. But then he went on to produce a band called the
Sunrays. Yeah.
After that, these are a couple of fellows that Carl and I went to school with. They were actually called the Renegades, and they were a blues band. And so Murray took some of his songs that he wrote and recorded Murray's doing that kind of surfy kind of Beach Boy clone. And I think they had a couple of successful little hits.
Yeah, they did. But the Marksman music, it's a different sound. You went away from that Beach Boy sound.
Yeah, when the Beatles came out in the midst of my own little surf band, we did a hybrid thing. It was a surf English kind of a sound that we kind of, adapted.
Dave and the Marksmen with I Wanna Cry. Yeah, very Beatle influenced, and so was your next project, The Moon.
Yeah, and then, of course, Moon was fully influenced by the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, and that kind of stuff, psychedelic pop.
Yeah, it's really well produced. Who produced those records?
His name was Larry Brown, and he was our age at the time. We were all 17, Matt Moore, Larry Brown, and myself. And, of course, we used people like Jim Keltner and David Jackson, bass and drums. But Larry played the drums on most of the stuff and ran the studio, produced the stuff. Between Matt Moore and Larry Brown, the production was done. Of course, I tried to throw my 2 cents in. But Larry Brown was the engineer, and he got that sound. And to this day, I say, Larry, how did you do that? And he goes, I don't know.
Yeah, because I don't know what kind of a budget you had, but boy, it sounds, as good as anything that came out at that time.
Yeah, we had a top-notch studio at the time, and we had a backer named Mike Kerb, who I believe now is really pretty successful in Nashville.
Yeah.
But at the time, he was a lawyer, and he was interested in music, so he started this little studio on Hollywood Boulevard and gave us the keys.
That's a track called Mothers and Fathers from The Moon. The album Without Earth, released in 1968, featured our guest today, Beach Boy David Marks. David, incredible stuff there.
Yeah, unfortunately, at the time, we had 2 Moon albums, and they were on Liberty Records. And shortly after we completed the second album, Liberty Records went belly up, and so the distribution and the promotion was nil. There was none. So that, was an unfortunate thing because there was a lot of airplay on the East Coast, but the kids couldn't buy it.
Yeah, very, very, very cool stuff. I want to ask you a little bit about Mike Love, because it seems that over the years, he's really tried to include you in Beach Boys activities, almost like an older brother type of relationship there.
Yeah, when I was a kid, going out on the road when I was 14, I have a feeling my father had put his arm around Mike and said, "You're the oldest, take care of the little brat." But he's still doing it, And it's just, I think, just having original members on stage really helps, for one thing. And we get along great. I have to hand it to Mike for keeping the music alive for all these years. He's really done a great job, worked his butt off doing that, playing all the time and keeping that music out there. I mean, it's like making thousands of people happy every night.
Yeah. And as you say, you do select dates here and there. I know you went to England.
Yeah, we did that last month. I did the England tour, and then I did a short run with them after that on the East Coast, and I'm about to embark on another 10-day run with the Beach Boys on the East Coast coming up here next week.
How did the song Get You Back become sort of your vocal showcase on these recent tours? Well,
Mike, he said originally when he recorded that song, he wanted Dennis to sing it, and that he liked that timbre that I suppose I've been told, actually, that my sound is similar to Dennis's. So I guess in Mike's mind, that song suited me, and it satisfied his ear for the lead vocal. I think he did a great job on the record, but he had something else in mind, and I guess in his mind, I suited it kind of more. And it's a cool song. Mike loves rhythm and blues, or the old doo-wop style stuff.
The Beach Boys, David Marks on guitar with Pet Sounds, live 2012 right here on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop. David Marks of the Beach Boys is our guest, and as we start to wrap up here, setting aside Beach Boys music, I mean, I can't imagine that you go around all the time just playing Beach Boys music. What sort of music do you like to play guitar with?
Well, I can't get, like you said, it's like the mafia. I can't get away from the surf thing. I was recruited by some Spanish guys to play over in Spain to the Marksmen material that I did back in the middle 60s. But, for the years I've done a lot of blues, jazz kind of stuff. I really enjoyed doing that, and I was interested in that for a long time. And I've also studied classical guitar. So I do go around with some Bach on the guitar to warm up in the morning. So I like anything that's good. I love people like the old Jerry Reed and nowadays Vince Gill with his guitar playing, and some of the obscure people like Alan Holdsworth and John McLaughlin. There's just so many great guitarists in the world, and I enjoy every kind of guitar style. It's done well.
That's amazing. You picked that guitar up at 10 years old and never looked back.
That's true. I wanted drums, but my parents said, "No way, this kid's getting drums." So they appeased me with the guitar, and I fell in love with it immediately.
Well, it's a love affair that lasted over 50 years. David, I want to thank you so much for chatting with us. And
very fun.
Thank you. Where can people go to catch up with what you're doing online?
DavidLeeMarks.com, and I guess there's Facebook.
Oh, yeah, David Lee Marks, official, I believe, on Facebook.
Yeah.
And finally, my last question. Will the Lion be getting his own website?
The Lion has done a nutrition video. I'm going to try to get Carrie to post that. But, seriously, I'm thinking about putting the Lion and doing his own website and trying to get him out there, because he's been all over the world,
Yes, he certainly has. Very mysterious.
People come up to me and go, "Hey, Dave, what's the Lion?" And I go, "Hey, either you get it or you don't. There's nothing to get, really." It's just fun. It's a lot of fun. My wife was on the internet one day, and she blurts out, "What kind of mask do you want?" And I said, "What the heck?" and I said, "Okay, a lion." And she got the pigeon, and the rest is history.
There it is.
Just let me say that there's going to be some adventures coming up with the lion and the pigeon.
Right. The lion and the pigeon will be having their own adventures. This could turn into a cartoon. Who knows where it could go?
Oh, yeah, a movie. You never know.
Thank you so much, David. You have a great rest of your day.
You too, and we'll see you next time.